since it's 8:02. So I want to welcome everyone today to the Midway Chamber's Economic Development Panel discussion on recovery in the Midway. I'm Terri Banaszewski with Sunrise Banks. I was just telling the panelists I celebrated my 20-year anniversary with Sunrise on Friday, and I'm happy to be chair of the Economic Development Committee here at the Midway Chamber. As we go through the panel discussion, we want you to post any questions you might have in the chat, and we'll address those as we get to Q&A probably at the end. But to start off today, I'd like to introduce Paul Ramseur with ELPIS. As we talk about recovery today, we wanted to share what one nonprofit member is doing to show support for others in our community. From ELPIS Enterprises, please welcome Paul. Paul, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to say hello. My name is Paul Ramseur. I'm the Executive Director at ELPIS Enterprises. ELPIS is a nonprofit located at the corner of University and Vandalia in St. Paul. We are a work readiness training program for youth experiencing homelessness, ages 16 to 23. We do that work in the context of small business, and so we've created small businesses, one of which is a full-service imprint business, screen printing and custom screen printing and embroidery. The other is a small manufacturing operation. We recycle cedar fencing and build a line of products out of that wood, mostly outdoor things like bird feeders and nesting boxes. During the COVID impact, a lot of our business was displaced, and we responded to that by, in the screen printing side, by making custom face masks and continued to do that. We also continue to print for organizations that still need t-shirts that are still gathering in certain ways. Our woodworking program, we changed from making actual products to making kits that get distributed to home educators through various websites so that they can continue to have that experience, but to supplement their educational purposes. In addition, then we responded to the civil unrest in both St. Paul and in Minneapolis by reconnecting with a program called the Green Chair Project. Some of you may remember the Green Chair Project back from the 90s, where these green Adirondack chairs were kind of placed around town. A gentleman named Joel Sisson, who started that project, is a friend of ours. And we contacted Joel and said that during all of this civil unrest, that there might be an opportunity to do something nice and build something nice for the community. So we resurrected that program, started teaching kids how to make Adirondack chairs, and then we started doing workshops around town with youth programs that were affected by COVID and affected by the unrest, building chairs with kids in the community. And so our program has, for the chair process, and the reason we wanted to be here today is our program for the chairs is that for every 2 chairs that we sell, we donate a chair to a youth program that's been affected by COVID-19 or affected by the unrest in the community. And so companies can purchase chairs for their use, for their employees' use. We've had companies sponsor chairs and donate chairs to youth programs to allow us to do these workshops out in the community. And we wanted to share that with you today. And if you have a question, my name and email is on my screen. And we would love to hear from you if you're interested in participating in that program, or would just like to learn more about ELPIS Enterprises. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Paul. It looks like a few comments in the chat that people are very familiar with what you're doing, and there's some people that have bought some chairs. So great option for many of us to consider. We will now get into our panel. On May 28th, the Midway community saw several buildings get damaged following the murder of George Floyd. What started at the Midway Target late morning spread out as hundreds took to University Avenue and surrounding businesses. Now, about 4 months later, we are here to talk about what's happened and what's next. So on our panel today, we are joined by Ricardo Cervantes, Director of Department of Safety and Inspections at the City of St. Paul, Solomon Hailie, owner of Bole Ethiopian Cuisine, and Chad Kulas, our Executive Director from the Midway Chamber of Commerce. We wanted Chad to participate in the panel because he's usually moderating, and we want his perspective since he's so tied into the community as well. So I'm going to start by asking a few questions, and I'll let each of the participants respond, and we'll go from there. And then, like I said, if you have any questions at the end, we'll try and address some of those questions. So I'll start with, how about I start with Solomon today? Tell us about the day and the week of civil unrest from your organization's perspective. Solomon? Need to unmute on your screen.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you again. It was a challenging couple of days when George Floyd was killed. That morning, I think this is Thursday morning for us. We left home knowing that because we heard about the target in Minneapolis. So we left home with a kind of heavy heart. By the time we got there, we see, especially my wife was the one who noticed that there was irregular activity by Target. People were gathering more and more. And then we were just starting our day cautiously. But around 11 o'clock, right after we opened, a couple of customers was telling us, it's better that we close the door because the numbers are getting bigger. The Target is right across the street from us. So that day we decided to close the door and go home. So right after when we get home, someone called me. This is around 3 o'clock, maybe a little later than that. They said the Napa was on fire. So when I left, both of my wife and I, we thought we were going to come back to the restaurant. So we never expected this would happen. So we left everything in the restaurant, including, the cartridges that I could take with me when I left, and some documents, my laptop. So I decided to go back, at least to grab a couple of things. But by the time I got there, it was just like a wall of smoke, even though the fire just started. But the way the building was done, we kind of share one roof, the ceiling. So the smoke was all over the building the moment the fire started. So I couldn't get in, and I pretty much watched everything burn down from the beginning, which is, well, you can imagine it was just heartbreaking. And then the firefighters came and told me that they're not going to save it, that I could go home. Even that minute, we really thought that we're going to come back and get something, we left behind. But that morning, Thursday, Friday morning, when we come back to just grab a couple of things, that's when we found out actually it was all damaged. And we were met by some people from the neighborhood and some people who watched this over, on internet. They kind of met us there, and we're just sharing some tears at that morning. That's when we really, the reality hit us. So that's pretty much how it went.
Thank you for sharing that, Solomon. Just devastating. And we feel just terrible for that loss. Ricardo, would you like to comment on how your day went that day and maybe the week and how the city is dealing with some of these things?
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ricardo Cervantes. I'm the Director of the Department of Safety and Inspections with the city. Also, one of the cabinet who was participating in the emergency center actually in the weeks preceding this, as we were working around our COVID response across the city. There are all kinds of challenges that had already been kind of put in place leading up to the civil unrest, to the rioting, and to the devastation that has taken place. I did want to just make one comment before I get started. You know, I've been working and I've gotten to know Solomon extremely well, and we've shared a lot of stories. I have not heard his account of the day, and so thank you for thinking of having him share that. Again, it just goes to the impacts on the individuals in our community, and so very heartfelt. So as I said, you know, I had been tracking the activity that had been happening in Minneapolis through our Emergency Operations Center. That's normally led by our Emergency Management Director. We had already transitioned into the police, being the incident commander, based on some of the activity that we were seeing across the metropolitan area. Our first responsibility is really the protection of individuals, you know, individual safety and property. And so as I recollect, you know, on the 28th, we were meeting about every half hour with updates in regards to what was happening in the city of St. Paul, with some updates in regards to what was happening across the city of Minneapolis. We had begun contemplating the curfew. We had contemplated the Skyway closure in regards to minimizing some of the damage and getting some of the folks off the street. You know, I had talked with Chief Inks, our St. Paul Fire Department chief, and he reminded me of the numbers, which was unbelievable. So he had mentioned that there were over 50 structure fires over the 28th and 29th. I take that back, over a 12-hour period. And then that was kind of sustained over about a 4-day period. And then there were also over 100 EMS requests during that 12-hour period on the 28th. And we have to kind of put things in perspective. What we were seeing in Minneapolis was less response to some of the fires. St. Paul took a different tact. In order for our fire department to respond, we needed the help of our St. Paul Police Department. And so they were working in tandem, police controlling the area to allow for the firefighters to do their work. I did not witness that. I had not seen video, but the mayor has made multiple references. He was on the scene, and he indicated that, you know, during some of those events that there were people throwing bottles and rocks and bricks and all kinds of things at our firefighters in their response. And then for us in DSI, me particularly, one of the tasks that I was asked to do was to ensure that the supply chain for boards and boarding up of buildings did not dry up. And so across the nation, there was a shortage of plywood. It became a high commodity. And so I was working with a variety of different suppliers to ensure that our businesses that wanted to board up their buildings, preparation for more civil unrest, had the ability to do that. The city has a contract, and so we work through that contractor to ensure that anybody using that contractor or other contractors in the building. Over that weekend after the 28th, one of the specific responsibilities for the Department of Safety and Inspection is to begin doing our DART assessment, a disaster assessment, Friday, following day. And that is a team of 4 individuals that go out, one from our building section and others from our fire inspection area. Again, there was still a lot of tension on the 29th. in regards to going into areas that were still smoldering, going into areas where individuals were still gathering, where individuals were engaging, where some of that looting continued. You know, one of the accounts I had from one of my inspectors was they were actually in Big Top. They, you know, kind of helped themselves into the store while we were in there and grabbed a bunch of liquor and kind of made their way out. And of course, we were protected in part by police, but a lot of that activity was still occurring, you know, into Friday and Saturday. We assessed 117 buildings over the next 4 days, and we ranked them in various categories. Our goal in the DART assessment is really to evaluate whether or not buildings are occupiable, whether or not they're safe to continue to be occupied, safe to continue to do business. And of the 117 buildings that we initially did, 14 of those were in a severe state, meaning that they were condemned or lost their certificate of occupancy. They had substantial structural or systems damage where they could not be occupied. There was another 14 that were had major damage but could have been salvaged, and but needed to have permits and systems checked and make sure that it was safe before they got reoccupied. And the remaining at that time had either glass breakage, minor damage, you know, damage inside the stores or inside the restaurants, inside the building that could have been cleaned up and reoccupied in very short order. And so we were extremely busy responding to a lot of questions from building owners, businesses about how quickly they could reopen and what was the path for them to reopen. In addition to that, and not to belabor some of the other work we did, you know, we began looking at resources for the businesses and building owners. With COVID, there had already been spun up some state dollars through deed, which we began looking at how do we connect individuals with deed, as well as the bridge fund, which the mayor had initiated again prior to the civil unrest, but could be a resource for individuals experiencing both COVID and the civil, you know, damage from the civil unrest. I'll hold it there, and that was kind of the account of what happened initially, and some of the responsibilities that we had.
Thank you. I think I'll tie in talking a little bit about resources there. Maybe Chad, you can kind of explain to the panel and also to our guests here what efforts the Midway Chamber has been taking and other community partners as far as being resources or helping with any types of loan programs.
Sure. Thanks, Terry. So first I'll go back and talk a little bit about what happened that first day and that first week with the Chamber. You know, I see Catherine Rede is on our meeting today, and it reminds me that the morning of May 28th, it started with, we were still doing our Economic Development Summit, and each one of those days focused on a different strategic directive of the Chamber, and that day was about community. And I also remember when we all got on that at first, it was a tough morning because of all the news that had been coming out of Minneapolis. And, you know, our hearts all went out to those businesses, not realizing that in a few hours, we'd be in a similar situation. And I first got a text from a member late morning saying that there were people looting the Target. And when you hear something like that, you don't fully know what to expect. Is it 5 people that is very isolated and it's going to be dealt with and it's done? Or does it escalate and grow, which is, of course, is what happened. So later that day, myself and our board chair, John Young, we talked about what can the Chamber do. We were out with a message. And then the next day, a lot of my day was talking to some of the members that I knew were going to be more closely impacted with it. It was talking with the senior commander, Steve Anderson from the Western District, just finding out from him what all was going on. And you know, going back to that theme of community, it was a great sign of what kind of a community we have, where a lot of people wanted to go and help. And their thought process was, I'm going to take a broom and I'm going to go to University Avenue and see if I can help out. And you know, by noon, a lot of those places were already completely cleaned up as far as any of that initial cleaning was concerned with the debris, just because so many people had that idea, whether it's employees, employers, residents, and just anybody else came by. So it was really a great sign of community that day. That meeting, our executive committee had a special meeting where we talked a little bit more in depth about what can we do. We quickly shifted gears from our economic development summit and had our next virtual meeting about, you know, your business has been damaged, now what? Where we talked a little bit more about what are some of those steps that are needed to be taken. We try to figure out some of those resources. I know that I've sent the Department of Commerce information to some people as they've been helpful with handling information. But one of the things that our executive committee had decided was we wanted to help with a fund, and we partnered with the St. Paul Area Chamber and the St. Paul Downtown Alliance. We meet every other week and decide on who's going to be able to get some more funds. We've had an application out for a while, and up to date, we've been able to give out over $340,000. And we've been able to raise, and some of it hasn't been in yet, but there's been commitments of over $1.2 million. So the generosity is still there with our community, and we've been able to get to a lot of those businesses, not only in the Midway. I should point out, the fund has also been able to help out some in downtown and on the east side over by Sunrise. So that's a big resource that we've been able to help out with. I can talk a little bit more probably later about some of the other businesses that are also looking to help out, but the fund has been a great way for us to show support.
Thanks, Chad. Solomon, I want to come back to you. You described the devastation to your business. What I'm wondering, and I'm thinking everybody's wondering, is what has been your thought process for next steps, and what have you decided to do moving forward?
Thank you again. I just want to start by saying thank you to Midway Chamber of Commerce. I mean, these are, when I tell you what's our plan, it might make us sound like we're very strong, but without these organizations, we're just pretty much, I don't think we'll be able to do it. But this has been my wife's childhood dream. So we have the product, and we're just waiting a time to get back and run. We know we can do this. So briefly, what this moment, I mean, the whole situation actually gave us time to really to sit down and think, and you know, and even what happened, all this community coming together, it just shaped our future in a way that we can really reach out. I mean, now we really know our calling. So first we sit down and we ask ourselves the hard questions. How can we create something withstand adversity and challenge like the pandemic? How can we digitally based, we can be a digital based business, which what is this pandemic or the civil arrest is teaching us nowadays. People are really going online, and then how can we go with that? And about the catering opportunity, before we were really focused on the small community that we came out of, but now we can really go out and, you know, think about weddings and corporate events. So we sit down about, we thought about all this and about the state fair, even in food trucks, private events. I mean, we really thought about a whole lot of things. And second, we work with our business strategy and our financial advisor to start brainstorming different solutions. This might go out for order, out of order, but we intended to really look at the challenge that this industry is going through. So we came up with like 3 phases. One is like I just mentioned about being in an online presence, which is, we call it the Bole Cloud Kitchen. We started thinking about this from our previous experience, but it turned out now even the bigger companies are thinking about doing the same thing. So we already started working on that. That was our first phase. And the second phase is the food truck, which is in the summertime. With all this craziness, and the Bole name is going out. So how can we really reach out to, you know, the community? So I mean, the food truck is one of the way that we can reach out. And the third one is the actual, the Bole Cuisine or Bole Express, which is supposed to be the sister restaurant. They're supposed to open a day before it burned down. So to go in detail shortly about this 3 phases. The first one, the cloud kitchen. This is delivery only business. It's really timely for this pandemic season. And then the food truck, like I said, if we get a chance to go out and do the state fair, and then it will allow us to reach customers that we can never reach out to. We really can go around the neighborhood. And the third one, the Bole, the actual restaurant, which we pray that this thing will come through, because we kind of find the place where we can locate it. But it just happened that the other day, about 3-4 days ago, it's exactly what we're looking for. And if it works out, this is really great for the community. With both restaurants that we lost, we found a place that we can bring that back again. And I mean, there's a lot of things going on in my mind right now, but this is pretty much what we're planning, or how we're planning to come back.
Thank you, Solomon. All of those options sound really good. So we hope that, you know, whatever the Midway Chamber can do to help, you use us as a resource to help. And Ricardo, I would say, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what you're seeing are next steps for the city and for many of these small businesses as they're making these decisions. Ricardo, do you want to comment on that? Oh, mute.
Yep, I was playing with my mute button.
There you go.
I thought it was open. Yeah. So for us, the city, we have been really interested in hearing from a variety of businesses to understand where they're at. After much of the devastation had ended, tables that were being hosted by the state, by the city, the mayor, and other in the county of which we participated. And it just seemed to be like there was a lot of change in a very short period of time in regards to what people's needs were in regards to their businesses. And for us, what we heard, we recently did a survey. We got the results back about 3 weeks ago. And I want to say we reached out to about 250 different businesses with a focus on hospitality businesses in St. Paul. And what we heard pretty clearly from the businesses that we connected with was there were 2 leading needs that they had. One was over, so that they could bridge and survive. And then the second one was to build this sense of confidence that they're open for business and that, you know, they want their customer base back. And so we're looking at ways to support them in that way. We have and will continue to look at ways that in the regulatory realm that DSI oversees, we have relaxed many of like the outdoor service areas. We've simplified the process. We've removed some of the elongated processes to do that. We removed the fees, and we've now are working with the deputy mayor, with the mayor and deputy mayor to extend the season for sidewalk cafes and so forth. So we'll continue to look for opportunities to make it easier for folks to continue. You know, there's so much uncertainty about this virus and how long we're going to have to be in this mode. And so we want to support businesses that way. In addition to that, you know, the City Council, along with PED, have passed ordinances around pay it forward. And so we want to continue to ensure that businesses are being connected with resources that will help them make decisions. I want to just highlight again, the city's webpage has a list of a variety of different services being offered pro bono. The state Department of Commerce, the state deed, Ramsey County, and now Midway has kind of joined the ranks, certainly with some of the technical support which can be offered by some of our contractors that are willing to provide, you know, a lot of their time and expertise to support businesses. And those could be businesses that are looking to reopen, or those are businesses that are looking to expand, or businesses that are looking to maybe create new space. And so we want to continue to support that. We're also looking for ways that we might be able to, you know, we lobbied up at the Capitol in regards for dollars specifically earmarked for the riots and the devastation, and we'll continue to look for other resources where we may be able to support these businesses. Specifically, you know, for DSI in my small realm, we have really expedited all of the business permitted work that needed to be done for folks to reopen. We'll continue to do that as we go forward. You know, I had mentioned that there were 5 buildings that were demolished. 4 of those buildings have since been cleaned up. One of those buildings was cleaned up by the city, where we clean it up and there is a special assessment. But we've been lobbying, you know, and getting the best prices for those that are looking to go forward, connecting them with contractors that we're familiar with that have been, you know, proven to get the job done well, and we'll continue to support the businesses as they go forward. I just wanted to point out one kind of success story out of all of this was Lloyd's Pharmacy. And Lloyd's knew that the community needed a pharmacy, specifically a pharmacy that provided, you know, the medical compounds that are hard to find. Certainly folks would have to travel in order to get those compounds. They have since reopened, you know, and we assisted them in kind of their new location, just about a block and a half south of where their original store is, as well as assisting them, you know, with their reconstruction of their new store, which would be at the same location. And so we're doing whatever we can as a city to support them in their, whatever their vision is.
Thank you, Ricardo. All interesting information. Chad, from your perspective, what do you think the business community can do to help support those that have been devastated by loss? And I know we're doing some of that. Part of our economic development committee is thinking about also producing more conversations like this on a monthly basis. So stay tuned for that. But Chad, do you want to comment on what else the business community can be doing to help businesses like Solomon's?
Yeah, well, first, some of the businesses have stepped up. I mean, early on, a lot of people, they didn't know necessarily what they could do to help out. They just raised their hand and said, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. But a lot of our businesses, one thing about a chamber, you've got organizations and businesses from so many different industries coming together. So we've got so many different talented people around the table. And I don't know if Russ Peterson is on here or not, but with Clever Architecture, Russ has stepped up. And Russ, if you are on, feel free to pop up and say something about what you're doing. But we've had a lot of those businesses that have said, here's my expertise, here's what I can help out with, and are either doing things at cost, pro bono. We've gotten a lot of the general contractors in the Twin Cities that have stepped up and said, we want to help out in any way we can. We don't necessarily want to do this for a profit. We want to just help how we can. So for some of them, it's been working with some of these smaller businesses that were impacted and saying, we can take a look at your insurance and we can figure out if you're getting exactly what you should be out of your insurance. That's another way that the Department of Commerce has been able to help out too. For some of them, they've been able to step up and say, we have access to getting, glass from a window company. We can help out with that. So a lot of those companies, the general contractors, have been really great. But again, it's the architects. I see Jamie Flannery's on the call. She's another one that has raised her hand and said, Flannery Construction can help out. So if you have a certain expertise, that's great. If you're sitting back saying, my company doesn't have anything that we can offer some of these businesses, a lot of those companies have given either to our fund or some of the other funds that are out there. I'll just mention African Economic Development Solutions and Asian Economic Development Association, both also have funds. And then there's, I see Dean Cummings is on from Union Park District Council. There's the Neighbors United Funding Collaborative, that their application process just started last week. So that's another option for a lot of these businesses. So again, you can always make a contribution, or you can talk to your company and see if they're willing to make a donation too.
Well, and I do see in the grouping too, another business owner that was directly impacted is Marcy McHenry. She's on the call today too. So she could chime in as well, as far if she wants to. But really, this year has been so very challenging, and none of us have undergone something quite like this before, especially with the civil unrest. And then we were dealing with COVID before that. So that was even more, there's a number of layers that impacted how everybody on this call does business every day. So in kind of a closing type of Q&A, to start the Q&A, would each of you, Solomon, Ricardo, and Chad, like to comment on what your organization has learned during this time of COVID? I know you alluded to it in how you're reformatting the business, Solomon, but if you want to make some additional comments, and then we'll keep that chat line open for Q&A. It is about 8:40, so let's, I'll give each of you a couple minutes to just kind of make some closing comments, and then we'll ask the audience if they've got some questions specifically for any of you. So Solomon, go ahead.
First of all, when this kind of thing happened, I mean, you need to stay positive. Don't stay in the negative spirits, and find a way to starting talking about the opportunities. Seek resource immediately, people that knows about laws, guidelines, lawyers, finance, like Midway Chamber of Commerce. I keep mentioning Midway Chamber of Commerce because throughout, since I started Bole, they've been there and kind of give me a hope of, reaching out to the broad. So, and to find a way to organize all documentation for a business and audit your system. Never give up. So, I mean, everything happens for a reason sometimes, and you really need to be on the positive side to go forward. And that's what I'm
Thank you.
thinking.
Thank you, Solomon. And being positive is always a good thing, but it's even more needed right now and coming together with the community. Ricardo, would you like to comment on what your group has learned during this COVID time?
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Terry. I think there's just a couple of things I want to hit on. One is just acknowledging the community in which we live in St. Paul, and in that there are a lot of great people in the city who want to help, and that we need to rely on a network of organizations, agencies, and individuals to really turn these big challenges around. And so first I want to acknowledge, all the folks that are on the call, all the folks that have been in many of the discussions and bringing resources together. So first I want to acknowledge that St. Paul is a great place, and the Midway is a great place to do business and to live. In addition to that, I also want to acknowledge the city's preparedness that, leading into the COVID, we had already exercised our emergency management system multiple times. And so St. Paul has a flooding problem, which we deal with regularly, which keeps us kind of strong in this area. But we also have had some major snow events. And that the incident command process allows for the city to really quickly prioritize the areas of attention that we need. And that has been applied by the deputy mayor, not only during the really initial emergency, but we're using that same strategy to respond to a variety of issues in our city. And that seems to be working extremely well, especially when we have limited resources. And then maybe lastly is communication. So again, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm really interested to hear from maybe some of the members on what they're thinking in regards to what the city should be doing. That is one thing that I've learned, and we try to practice, is really listen to our customer, listen to our residents, listen to those that are in our city, so we better understand what it is they need. So we're not coming up with solutions that are not hitting the target. So those are just a couple of thoughts.
So Ricardo, Tony Mendoza posted a question. How long is the city considering extending the relaxed outdoor dining season regulations?
So I just reviewed a executive order last night. The mayor is looking at until the snow flies. So we're looking until, and maybe even longer. So when we have a 2-inch accumulation on our sidewalks, that's when we'll end. And so that's for safety reasons and making sure our sidewalks are open for people to pass on.
So maybe we'll get lucky and have a mild start to winter to give these restaurateurs as much time as possible outdoors. And I know there's some other postings happening. Russ did post, if everyone looks at the chat, he did post about the fact that they're doing 2 to 3 hour consultations with businesses that were affected by the events that are free, and 50% off fees for those. Some of the help there, Catherine and Dean have both posted different organizations, Collaborative, Neighbors United Funding Collaborative with websites, and Hamlin Midway Coalition, Real Estate Cooperative, that are thinking of new ways to also assist. Chad, do you want to also, first I'll ask also, Marcy McHenry has a question for Ricardo. What was the City of St. Paul's determination of the damage of the Midway Shopping Center as a whole?
I don't have that specific information pulled out. I can give you some general numbers that, and we collect this data using certain calculations. So we know maybe better what the damage was to buildings, because that's the physical damage. And we were estimating through our Planning Economic Development Department that it was $73,374,000 of damage to property In addition to that, they did some approximations on what that would include, what that would be including inventory, and that came out to 82 million. So we don't have like the shopping center specific numbers, but that's generally for the whole city. And that was about 334 properties that were on our list that we looked at.
Thank you for that. Chad, would you like to comment on, how we've been dealing at the Midway Chamber with our economic development, with membership, with our members' needs directly regarding COVID before we had the civil unrest?
Yeah, well, like every organization, you just need to adapt to the situation. And that's what we did. And, we're an organization that typically thrives on in-person functions, meetings, events, and to lose that, other than some of our activities have been outside, like we're doing tonight at Lake Monster at 4 o'clock. But, it's going virtual on the meetings like we are right here, and finding content that's really relevant. Particularly early on, we focused a lot of our programming on what kind of content would be relevant for businesses that are impacted by COVID. And then also, of course, with recovery efforts. And, this is also a nice opportunity that we're finding with the chamber. All the businesses, all the members are struggling in some way with COVID and in different ways, but this is an organization where you can meet up with other people, even if it's a virtual thing like this. If you're seeing somebody else on this participant list you think you could relate to, whether it's another business owner or an organization similar to yours, I'd invite you and encourage you to reach out to them and talk with them and see how they're handling it and what you can learn from them. And I always tell people, you can always reach out to me if there's somebody that you want an introduction to. I'm happy to do that for you. So please look at the chamber as a resource during this time. We're here for you, and it's a part of our community.
Thanks, Chad. I do want to mention again, our Economic Development Committee is going to get back on track now as we get into the fall and host breakfast sessions or lunch sessions tied to different topics, and the next couple will all be tied into this recovery effort and conversations around that. Chad, I don't know if any of you would like to make any final comments here. We don't have a ton of questions coming in for any of the panelists. So you guys did a really good job of covering the topic that we had set aside for today. And it is now about 8:50. So any final comments? Solomon, do you want to make any final comments?
No, thank you. But I just can't wait to come back and, see each other face to face, and hope to serve you soon, everybody.
Solomon, can I ask you a follow-up on your cloud kitchen? Can you give us more detail on the timeline? Because, whenever you're back up and running in whatever capacity it is, we definitely want to know. And there's a lot of people, I think, on this call that are going to be eager to support your business.
Technically, we're just waiting for the city to approve the kitchen we found. Everything else is ready. And my wife was here. She can't wait to really cook again, and even me, I've been practicing more. So everything is ready, but we're just waiting for the city to approve our kitchen. Again, this is a fellow business owner who couldn't operate his place. You probably know the East African Injera Bakery. It's on Victoria and I think University. So we're helping him by renting his kitchen, but we're just waiting for approval, so that way we can start. But the website and everything is ready. So this is amazing stuff, but we can't wait to show it to people.
Wonderful. Ricardo, before I let you make a closing comment, there's another question from Jeff Fensky. Why is there still so much plywood up? are those particular businesses possibly closed, or is there trouble finding glass or any impediments to DSI?
Good question, Jeff. Thanks for asking that. So during normal times, we have a pretty time-proven process in getting boards removed from buildings that have sustained a fire or damage or anything like that. We relaxed that a little bit given the state that we're in, the state of emergency with COVID. There's been some concern that there may be other incidents that are going to create more disturbances. If you recollect, just not that long ago in Minneapolis, there was a suicide that was construed to be more violence, police violence, and which a lot of folks called me that day and said, Ricardo, what do you think? Is that going to happen over here? And so we're being a bit cautious on kind of a hard line on having the boards removed. There has been a shortage of certain supplies, but not glass, and not to my knowledge. So we are now in discussions talking about having kind of a hard deadline for removal of boards. I can assure you that businesses that are open that have boards have the egress and other requirements to allow for them to be open and operate safely. But we are going to need to kind of put a date out there, hard date for us to move forward and get these buildings back in the design order, that they were built. So we're working on that. I just wanted to, in addition to that, last comment is, I pride myself on my department and my staff having been open throughout this entire pandemic. So we have augmented how we do business, but we've never closed our doors. And so for all of you and all those that are looking to do alterations or development in the city, we are definitely open for business. We've launched other elements of our online review process. So we'd be happy to answer questions. 651-266-8989 is our number. Do not hesitate to call us with any questions. We want to assist you in the process. We do miss the face-to-face. We're not doing that very often. But we are doing a lot of Zoom, we're doing a lot of Teams, and so we are staying connected with individuals that want to continue to build and do alterations in our city. So please contact us with any questions.
Hey,
Thank you,
Ricardo, one
Ricardo.
question
Go
that
ahead, Chad.
people have asked about the rubble of the buildings that have been burned down or torn down, and I know that you mentioned 4 of the 5 have been cleaned up. I know for a while people were wondering when the cleanup was going to happen, and you had told me one time kind of that process that's taken. Can you explain the process to everybody on how to remove the rubble, what needs to happen?
Sure, real briefly. During normal times, we would normally give a date. We want to ensure, first of all, that everybody who's been impacted has the ability to work with their insurance company. There's been, I would say it's been more difficult for individuals to kind of get some of their business done. We laid out about a 90-day process before we started getting any hard lines in regards to cleaning up that rubble. One of the challenges we have in the city is that the monies we use to remove buildings in our city is got certain requirements on it. And so most of the buildings we remove have been vacant for a period of a year, usually about a year. Before we move into that. But some of the money that we have funded to remove buildings then puts the city responsible for other things. And so we haven't been able to use some of those funds to clear it. We did clear the Sports Dome building, and we were able to use a contractor that we normally use. We use about 4 different contractors, and depending on where they are in rotation, they'll provide us those services. But we certainly want building owners to get bids and get the best price to move forward. We have one out-of-state owner who has indicated that they wanted to rebuild, but they wanted to sequence it, phase it in so that they could do the demo and then begin right away with the construction. That saves them about anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000. We're trying to work with them, in that process. the plans that they've submitted specifically on that one are not allowed. So what we're planning to do is not allowed. So from a zoning perspective, we're kind of back to them, asking them what else or how would you offer that phased in approach so you can save some money in the process. So we'll continue to work with them. I'd say Lloyd's Pharmacy, very easy. They had the same footprint. It was grandfathered in, very smooth transition from one to the other. So it can take a little bit of time, but we are anticipating to get the last buildings cleaned up before the snow flies.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Chad, any final comments? It's about 8:57, so we have a couple minutes. We're coming right to the kind of conclusion. And also to mention, we've got our walking tour this afternoon. I think 3 o'clock at Allianz or 4?
Yeah, so 3 o'clock start. We're going to be meeting in the parking lot just north of what they call the Great Lawn by Allianz Field. So if you think about where Big Top had been and McDonald's, it would be in between those two buildings and where Allianz Field and the grassy area is. There's parking over there. We will have somebody from DSI there. If you haven't had a chance to just walk around and see it, this is an opportunity for you to do that. I know that we're going to have some people from Anderson Windows there who are also interested in supporting the efforts. And then following that, we've been doing our business after hours and trying to support our taproom members while we can still enjoy nice weather. It looks like it should be pretty nice out today. We're going to be at Lake Monster at 4 o'clock. If you're interested in attending Lake Monster, please RSVP and preferably before noon today, because we do need to give them reservations. They're very strict on that, which I appreciate that they're taking it all very seriously. So, but in closing, I would just basically say that we have our website that's got a lot of information on it, including members and what they are willing to do for help. Clever Architecture is one of them. Russ mentioned his information earlier. If you're a business that wants to help out, please send me the information. We can put it up on our site. We send out our daily newsletters, which has information on both COVID and recovery efforts. So you can find some information there, including about our upcoming programming too.
Thank you, Chad. We will wrap now, and I just want to make one shameless plug, which is for Sunrise Banks, and the fact that on a different topic, we are having a business breakfast, which we do every fall, and this one will be virtual, but October 28th from 8 to 9, and we will have Professor David Schultz on that day to kind of talk about the election and what he foresees happening with the election and how it could impact our economy and tie in there. So anybody's invited, since, it's limitless when you can be virtual. So I appreciate all of you tuning in, and thank you to our panelists. We really appreciated your time, Solomon, Ricardo. Chad, thanks for being a panelist this time. And we will keep you posted. This has been recorded as well, so it will be on the Midway Chamber newsletter. Chad will send out a link, so if you want to revisit it or pass it on to anyone else in your organization or any other members. So thank you all for tuning in, and hope to see some of you this afternoon at the walking tour.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.